Part 1. The assignment. It started as an ordinary Friday night. My friends and I were huddled in the school's computer lab working on a project due the next morning. The rows of screens cast faint glows across the room, and the occasional flicker of a dying fluorescent light broke up the stillness. Nothing seemed off at first, just the typical quiet of an empty school after hours. But then, as the hours slipped by, people began to peel off. They'd mutter something about an early morning or nod toward the clock with heavy-lidded eyes, and one by one, they'd vanish down the dimly lit hallways. Soon, only 3 of us remained: me, Jason, and Laura. Determined to finish, we downed energy drinks, cracked jokes, and tried to stay awake as the clock crept toward midnight. We were alone. Or so we thought.
Part 2. Flickers in the dark. By 12:30, the silence had grown so deep it felt like it was pressing in from all sides, wrapping around us like a thick fog. Every so often, the quiet would shatter as the old building settled, creaking and groaning, each sound setting us on edge. That's when the first flickers started. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me, but then I saw the flicker again, a shadow darting across the far wall. Jason noticed it too and laughed it off, trying to shake the growing unease by telling us it was probably just a bug trapped in one of the fluorescent tubes. But the way he kept glancing over his shoulder told me he wasn't convinced. Then the screen nearest to us powered on. No one had touched it, and the sudden glow was blinding in the dark. As we watched, the cursor blinked. Just a blinking line at first, almost mocking us with its quiet, rhythmic pulse. Then, without warning, it began to type, HELPME.
Part 3. The first whispered words on the screen sent a chill down my spine. Lara, usually the brave one, paled and took a step back. "This is a joke, right?" she whispered, though her voice cracked on the last word. Before I could answer, the lights above us went dark, and the hum of the computers died. I could feel my heart pounding, the silence thick, cloying. But even as we stood there, barely daring to breathe, I heard it, a whisper, faint, so soft it was almost impossible to make out. Turn around. No one moved. I didn't dare to. There was something in the whisper, something wrong, twisted. It was like hearing a familiar song played at half speed, each note dragging out in a way that felt sickeningly hungry.
Part 4. A glimpse of shadows. Jason, always the skeptic, broke the silence with a forced laugh, his voice shaky. "Come on. It's just the wind," he muttered, but as he said it, I could see his gaze darting to the doorway. I didn't want to look, but some strange compulsion, pulled me toward it. Slowly, I turned, peering into the pitch-black hallway, and there it was, a figure standing just outside the room. It was tall, impossibly thin, a shadow darker than the shadows round it, as if it had swallowed the light itself. It tilted its head, staring at us, or at least, I think it was staring. There was no face, no eyes, just an empty, black void. Lara clutched my arm, her nails digging into my skin, and I heard her whisper, "We need to leave now." But the shadow figure took a step forward, and as it did, the temperature in the room plummeted. I felt my breath come out in quick, foggy bursts, and every instinct screamed at me to run. Yet my legs refused to move. Part 5. Cold touch. Jason, either braver or more foolish than the rest of us, took a step forward, as if drawn toward the figure. "It's just a shadow," he said, his voice barely a whisper. It's not real." But as he spoke, the figure reached out, its hand stretching, long and skeletal. I felt its icy touch before it even made contact. A shock of cold seared through me, as though I'd been plunged into frozen water. I gasped, stumbling back, and everything went black.
Part 6. Alone in the aftermath. When I opened my eyes, I was lying in the hallway alone. The morning light was creeping through the windows, soft and warm, chasing away the darkness. I scrambled to my feet, rushing back to the computer lab, but it was empty. Jason and Lara were gone. Desks overturned, chairs scattered, but not a single sign of them. The school told me they'd transferred, but I knew better. I knew what had happened, knew they were still somewhere in that building, trapped, waiting, calling out for help that would never come. I never went back to that school. But sometimes, even now, I wake up in the dead of night, the memory of that shadow lingering just beyond my vision. And every so often, I hear a whisper, soft and pleading, telling me to turn around.